Welcome to episode 26 of the Marketing Operators Podcast. Today we've got a really fun one on. We've got the president of Shopify, Harley himself, on the podcast, where we talked about founder mode and how Shopify embodies that, chaos monkeys, the future of Shopify, and so much more. As always, thanks so much to our sponsors, Motion, Richpanel, and Prescient AI.
So once Black Friday comes around, it's basically pencils down at that point with your ad creative. You pretty much need to have all of your testing done, understand what's working, what's not working, so you can roll those ads out for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and holiday to execute on your biggest time of the year and just really be in execution mode during that time of the year. So at HexClad, we are all about naming conventions. Connor McDonald often says naming conventions are the lifeblood of any e-commerce business, and we really believe in that. We set up our naming conventions in a way so it is incredibly easy to visualize what is working, what is not working using a tool like Motion. So we are tagging static ads, video ads, UGC, hi-fi, lo-fi, seasonal, evergreen, offer, any variable that you want to test in your ad account. As long as you input that into your naming conventions, you can then organize by your naming conventions in a tool like Motion to visualize data and compare those ads to one another and see which ads are performing above your benchmarks, at your benchmarks, below your benchmarks. You can figure out which new ads are incrementally or marginally better than the aggregate performance of that similar category. So if you launch a new batch of statics or a new seasonal holiday ad, you can compare to all your statics or all your seasonal holiday ads. That is how we approach it at HexClad. It is so important for us optimizing our creative stack and just understanding what's working both in an evergreen period and during a holiday offer period. So if you're ready to learn how the best DTC and e-commerce brands use Motion to ship winning Meta, TikTok, and YouTube ads, book a demo today or create a free account at motion.com. Motion offers a monthly subscription plan so you can dodge those annoying annual contracts. And if you mention Marketing Operators Podcast to Motion's sales team, you can get 50% off your first month. Check them out at motion.com.
All right, guys, we have a very special one today. The man that needs no introduction, the man that has one name, I think maybe the only guy in e-commerce that can be known by one name. We've got Harley, the president of Shopify, here with us today. Harley, how are you doing? And thank you so much.
I've never been described as the one someone with one name. I'm like, I guess there's other, like there's Toby too. I mean, Toby also is kind of one name, but he doesn't do as many podcasts as I do. I'm doing great. It's an honor to be on. I will just share with the listeners and the viewers here that when we sort of did our little green room, you guys thanked me for coming on, and I said, no need to thank me. This is my community. These are my people. I mean that. I know you guys call this, this is all about operators, and particularly with a sort of bend on marketing. But this is my ground state. You try to create a career for yourself where this is going to sound weird, but the thing that you think about in the shower is the thing that you actually get to work on day to day. And this is it. I mean, I think this is, I think for all four of us, this is exactly that. The thing that we are obsessed with, the things that we geek out on, that we, think about in laying in bed at night. It's also the thing we get to do day to day. I think that makes us very, very fortunate people.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now your passion for it is obvious. You're always, you're doing customer service on Twitter all the time, and it's something that's amazing. People will reach out if they've got something with their store, and it's amazing how often you're able to help out even on the weekends, even with small things. So passion is obvious, and it seems like there's definitely something in the water at Shopify which helps with that. So you are a kind of few ways we want to take it. I know we want to talk about founder mode because that was active, and sounds like you got some thoughts on that. Would love to talk about you being an e-commerce operator yourself, because I think that's interesting, and kind of what you've learned and how that's helped you and your real role, and then a few other things. But yeah, what is your biggest learning or lesson or biggest struggle that you learned from your own brand? You've got your own brand, Firebelly Tea, for people that don't know. What's the URL so we can plug it? Firebellytea.com?
Firebellytea.com.
Awesome. Yeah, what's the biggest challenge and biggest learning that you've had, and is there anything that you actually brought into Shopify to try to help with that?
So I've built now, I've been at Shopify for about 15 years or so. I'm 40, so about a third of my life has been spent at Shopify. I built my first store in 2006, which is a t-shirt store. I was one of the first merchants on Shopify. I think most listeners kind of know that story. That was my introduction to Toby and to the company. And then I sort of, stopped selling t-shirts and started helping other people sell stuff, including t-shirts. My second store we built in 2020. My best friend is David Siegel. David is famously the founder of David's Tea, which I'm sure someone's going to correct me on this, but I think it's one of the largest, from a market cap perspective, was one of the largest tea companies ever created. I think they had about an $800 million market cap post IPO, which they went public around the same time we did. And then during the pandemic, because we were sort of all working from home, I drink coffee. I like to drink coffee in the morning, but I was drinking a lot more coffee in the afternoon then because I'm an extrovert and I wasn't getting energy. And so I was drinking more coffee and I was getting more anxious. I was in this like really bad sort of, entrepreneurial anxiety loop. And David came over at some point and said, hey, like, you should not be drinking coffee. You should be drinking tea in the afternoon. I was like, I'm not a tea guy. I don't even know like what, I don't know anything about tea. I don't know the difference between black tea or green tea. And he's like, hey, here are the teas that I myself love. This is the best sencha. This is the best matcha. This is the best mate. And David was curating this like great tea kits for me. And so eventually I was like, hey, dude, why don't we just sell this? And two things will happen. One is we can share the world's greatest tea with the world, but also it'll give me a chance to utilize everything that Shopify is building sort of in hyper real time. And so we launched in 2020 or so, I think 2021. And part of the reason I love it so much is I spend a lot of time in the Shopify admin. So, whether it's things like collabs or things like collective, or it's trying out a new way to, a Shopify Capital, for example, and how quickly from that first offer to when the money hits my account, does that take? I'm able to not just go to these product teams, these incredible product leaders and say, hey, I read on X or on Instagram that this product, people don't love it and here are the reasons why. I can actually go and say, here are 3 screenshots of me actually utilizing it. And it's super helpful. I actually think that if you are running, for anyone listening, if you are running a company, whether it's a product and it's a CPG or it's a technology company, the fact that we have a term for it called dog fooding tells me and suggests to me that not enough people are doing it, because if you need to create a term, it means that it's somewhat unique. Whereas I think if everyone actually used their product, I'm not saying that, Cody, you're using the Miracle Bomb from Jones Road often. Maybe you should.
Maybe.
But I think that you do get an inherent benefit when you put yourself, like, forget empathy. Empathy is when you put yourself in the shoes of someone else. That is not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is actually using the product, so you yourself are a customer of the product you are selling. I think when you do that, you tend to have much higher fidelity feedback and advice. And in a couple areas, this has been, I'll give you one specific example. Shop Pay, I think I think it's the greatest way to check out. I frankly, as a consumer, if you don't use Shop Pay, I'm probably not going to buy for your store. It's just everything else takes too long. It's not as elegant, not as fast, not as secure. But for Shop Pay, when we first started using it, the way that Shop Pay was operating with our subscriptions wasn't actually, this is before Shopify had native subscriptions. We were using a third-party subscription app. Shop Pay and the subscription app were sort of fighting. And so I was able to actually do a video screenshot of, hey, here's the flow, what it looks like to use Shop Pay and subscriptions. This doesn't make any sense. That's all been fixed now. It's not to say that the reason it was fixed is because of Firebelly Tea, but I can actually provide a little bit more pressure and say, this is my experience. I think we can do better.
That's awesome. I love that so much. I was going to ask for specific examples. So that's so cool. And something super awesome.
Harley, are you an operator in that business in any way, or have you kind of offloaded the operations of that? I'm curious, like, how much time you're putting into that Shopify store.
I'm not at all. Not on a day-to-day basis. No, David runs the company full time. He's sort of the CEO and COO and everything at Firebelly. Shopify is a big company. It's a very important company to me personally, but also to the world. I think we power about 11% of global e-commerce. I don't think you can have a leadership role at a company like Shopify and do it part-time or do it 80%. It's full on all the time.
Yeah.
What I have decided, and in the green room, we were sort of joking about a little bit about Bobby Brown and my little podcast called Big Shot. What I have realized though is that I have capacity for, other than Shopify, for a couple weekend hobbies. Other than my daughters and my wife, who I love and adore very, very much. I'm not a sports guy. And so instead of watching sports on the afternoon on Sundays, I record podcasts with incredible, Jewish entrepreneurs like Bobby Brown and Mickey Drexler, as we discussed. But I don't think you can do too many things at the same time and do it really, really well. I know that there's sort of this jack of all trades philosophy or strategy that you can read on social media about. It doesn't really work for me. Like Shopify is kind of it. It's everything right now for me. I hope it's going to be the case for quite some time in the future. But I don't have the time to run it full time. However, what I do is on a monthly basis, Dave and I sit down for an hour and a half on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning, and we just go through the business and we talk about, do we have the best fulfillment partner? How are things going on TikTok ads versus Instagram ads? We began to experiment with actual B2B. So we're in Erewhon and we're in Bloomingdale's and we're in Indigo. How is that going? Is that working well for us? Do we think that's actually worthwhile? Obviously, the margins of on a wholesale basis are much smaller than when you go direct to consumer. But are we meeting the right type of audience through Erewhon sufficiently that we're willing to give up a big chunk of margin, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get in front of those people? So from a sort of high level strategy perspective, I get involved. That's not because David needs me. It's really because I love this shit. I think it's so fun.
Can't help yourself.
I didn't realize you had a podcast too. You really are one of us, Harley. You own an e-com brand. You've got a podcast, active on Twitter.
I'm motivated. Yeah. This the podcast, by the way, is also it's called Big Shot. It's Cody knows this really well. It's an archival project. So I'm a Jewish entrepreneur. I'm a proud Jewish entrepreneur, and I didn't have posters on my wall when I was a kid, but if I did, it would that Michael Jordan shot of him with his arms stretched out that like every '80s kid had. I didn't have that. I didn't have Vanilla Ice or MC Hammer on my walls. But if I would have had posters on my walls as a child, it would have likely been incredible entrepreneurs, and specifically Jewish entrepreneurs that I really looked up to. And so this archival project has allowed me to interview people like Izzy Sharp, who built the Four Seasons, and David Rubenstein, and Larry Silverstein, who owns the World Trade Center, and Bobby Brown, who built, obviously, changed the entire makeup industry. It allows me to sit down with them and tell their stories to the world. And the crazy part is that these are people whose stories are not well known. So I'm sure you guys have been to a Four Seasons hotel at some point. The Four Seasons has this rule called the Golden Rule, and it's effectively the philosophy around service. How you give service, how when you're asked a question from a customer or a client, how you respond. Well, most people would assume that was built from MBAs or consulting companies or luxury, emulating LVMH or something. Actually, Izzy Sharp, who created Four Seasons, created the Golden Rule because he decided at some point in his career to sit through the onboarding of what it's like when you get a job working at a McDonald's restaurant. And he actually had his entire executive team go through McDonald's restaurant training, and that is how the goal. So this is a silly example, but those stories have never been told before, and Big Shot allows me to do so.
Amazing. So I do have one question, and we'll be backtracking a little bit. Maybe it parlays into founder mode, but you talked about owning a brand. I talked with Patrick Milligan recently, who's
Great
owning the role. Amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Very active on Twitter. I'm big on Shopify customer accounts. So he's rolling that out for those that aren't familiar. He also owns a brand that he runs on the side. So how common is that at Shopify for Shopify operators to also own brands on the side or be involved kind of tangentially? And do you guys look for that sort of like entrepreneurial spirit in the hiring?
I think that Shopify is a company built for entrepreneurs, built by entrepreneurs. I mean that. That's not just a line. I mean, we've known each other for a while. This group, I don't have to throw out platitudes here. If you look at, let me give you a concrete example. If you look at our partnerships team, if you look at our core engineering group, if you look at the Shop app, if you look at Merchant Solutions, if you look at our COO, a large swath of some of the most important parts of Shopify are ran by founders. Carl, who built Ticktail, is running the Shop app. Kaz, who built Cash, which was acquired by Square. He's our chief operating officer. Daniel DeBow, who built Helpful, is running partnerships. Head of engineering is Farhan, so if you look across Shopify, Glenn Coates runs core engineering. We acquired this company called Handshake. Some of you may know that. It was a B2B wholesale business product. So if you look at Shopify, not only is our customer, the people we serve, entrepreneurs, but the people running the company are also entrepreneurs. And as part of that, yeah, they're gonna do cool stuff on the side. Now it's important that like if you're at Shopify, needs to be your main quest. It cannot be a side quest, and we are incredibly specific about that. But if on the weekend, if you're not necessarily into watching, football on Sundays, you're not really into whatever other people might be into on the weekends, and actually your thing on nights and weekends that you really love doing is building incredible new businesses, we love that. Because again, a lot of companies talk about empathy. Empathy is putting yourself in the shoes of someone else. That is very different than actually also being like someone else as well. And so you see a lot of that. And then the really cool part is, this is probably more information than I was planning on mentioning, but it's important. Founders at Shopify stay for a very long time. Companies that we acquired, if you look at the teams that we've acquired, they still stay well beyond the traditional stint of after you get acquired by whatever company, you get your earn out and then eventually you leave. That doesn't happen here. Why? Because it's sort of this aggregated, all of us can be doing our own life's work. We can all be on our personal missions, but actually if we do it all together, the result of that is we can actually, build a $100 billion company. We can actually help millions of stores around the world to modernize retail and to think totally different about how commerce should operate. So you see a lot of that. And the way it manifests to, I think, the public, or at least, the social media public on X is you see these people, you open by mentioning that I'm constantly doing, customer support on X. Dude, if you're not doing that, like, you should change. Like, you're clearly not doing the thing that you were meant to do during your life. Like, this is it. This is not, this isn't a dry run. This is your life right now. And if you are not compelled to actually peruse every platform to figure out what are people saying, good or bad, about the product you're selling, and then respond to it, you're not doing well. And, I obviously, of the three of you, I know Cody the best. I mean, I see Cody doing this all the time with Jones Road. I mean, you guys are all building in public, which is fine. You're not the only people to build in public, but you're building in public, but you're also operating in public. And those things are very different. Building in public is, me going on X and talking about our earnings call after CNBC. I'm explaining what we did and stuff. But building in public is me responding to people saying, hey, I'm struggling with accounts, or I'm struggling with, Shop Pay or Shopify payments in this particular geography. Or, why do we have a limit of 10 stores? Historically, point of sale didn't necessarily, now you can do up to 1,000 stores on point of sale. Initially it was only 10 or 12 or something. That is actually operating public, which is very different and far more valuable.
First of all, I'm already fired up, ready to go build after this. Just from your passion, it's contagious. I also see why you needed to launch a tea brand with everything you're doing, all the intensity that you have. Probably takes.
I got to get away from the coffee in the afternoon. Although I'm using two Shopify for all the coffee snobs here. We talk about tea a lot. I don't own a coffee company, but I'm using two products from Shopify stores right now to have my coffee every day, and they're fantastic. One is called X Bloom. X Bloom is Shopify store. X Bloom is really cool. So what it does is it emulates, the pour over that like you see in like some hipster coffee shop in Brooklyn. Well, it does that it's a coffee machine, but it actually emulates the pour over, and it's perfect. It shakes it automatically. It grinds fresh beans. So X Bloom is great coffee. And then of course Ember, I think, is just like the most simplest. What a simple product. But the fact that the temperature of your coffee can be consistently 148 degrees or whatever your preference is, like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I've seen them. Those are great gifts as well. Will you? I know you said you love, Shop Pay, and it's such a great experience, and I agree. Like, I have definitely abandoned carts if they don't have it. Do you also, just like out of principle, sometimes get to a site, see it's not Shopify, and be like, nah, I don't need that. I'm going to get it from a Shopify brand?
I just did that 20 minutes ago. I did my first, I'm not a big like marathon or ultra endurance person, but I did my first ultra endurance race this past weekend. It's called Everesting, which is actually a Shopify store. And Everesting is basically you emulate climbing Everest. So it's 29,029 feet. This program is called 29029. Jesse Itzler and a couple others built it. And the way to do these ultra endurance types of races is assuming you have the threshold requisite you're in physical shape that's decent enough to do it. The actual difference between people that complete it and people that don't is almost entirely about mindset, which I have a pretty good mindset about positivity and getting shit done. And the second is nutrition and electrolytes. Gatorade just came out with a patch that you put on your arm. It was actually made for NFL football players. You put on your arm, it's like $3 per patch, and it connects to a smartphone, and you can actually see how much sodium you are losing from your sweat on a minute-to-minute basis. I thought this was like the coolest thing, because there's no way now when you're doing one of these races to either take too much electrolytes or too little. It quantifies it for you. And I went to the Gatorade site and I tried to buy this patch, and it was like, I don't know what it's on, but it was not very good, and I didn't end up completing it. And by the way, it's like I think it's a pack of like 100, so it's like a $300 package. I didn't complete it because there's no way I'm going to spend 8 minutes going back and forth on my login information, signing up, and then address and billing verifications and all that. It doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing of walking to a shopping mall today, going to a great store, trying on this amazing t-shirt, getting the cash, and them saying cash only. And you're like, cash only? What are you talking about? Everyone else in this mall takes a credit card. I can tap to pay. It's the modern day digital equivalent of I only accept cash. It sucks.
Agreed with that.
Sorry, Gatorade. Call me. Gatorade, call me.
Yeah, get on Shopify. Let's do it.
So if you're an e-commerce brand and you have .com and distribution channels, Prescient AI's tool is a game changer. They have an industry-first ability to measure proprietary halo effects that can tell you down to the campaign level the impact of all of your ad spend across both your e-commerce store sales and your Amazon store sales. We use MTA tools at Hexclad and we love them. However, MTA tools are not going to tell you the return on ad spend considering your Amazon store. So in reality, you might dial back or turn off a campaign that looks like it's underperforming per your MTA, but if you're including your .com and Amazon sales in your attribution, that actually might be a higher performing. So we've actually used Prescient at Hexclad to confidently scale our CTV and meta channels. And we're also able to validate those top of funnel channels' impact on Amazon by calibrating the model results with a proven incrementality test that we ran through house. So not only is it giving us a great model on its own, but it's also integrating with these other tools. When you think of omni-channel measurement, think of Prescient AI. So we use Prescient at Hexclad. It's used by other top brands like Good American, Symbiotica, Timbuktu, Nude, and dozens more. Prescient AI, helping brands scale spend confidently with AI-powered marketing mix models. If you want to check out Prescient AI's marketing mix modeling tool, go to prescientai.com/operators. That's prescientai.com/operators.
Switching gears a little bit, I want to go talk about Founder Mode, something we chatted about last week, and I know you want to talk about as well. So for people that haven't seen it, Paul Graham wrote a great essay a few weeks back that went viral on Twitter, talking about Founder Mode versus Manager Mode. So Harley, in your own words, like why do you think that resonated with people? Why do you think that resonated with people? And like, what's your outlook on that? Because you guys have a very unique perspective with what you just shared at Shopify.
I think Founder Mode is this. I think naming things, like creating nomenclature, is very, very powerful in general, whether you're running a company or in your personal life. One of the things that my wife and I have been doing since we got married 10 or 11 years ago is going to see a couples therapist. I've said this publicly before. We like going to couples therapy together. It's been really helpful to us. But one of the things we did in couples therapy was we created names for things. And like when I'm feeling a certain way, like I can be like, hey, Linz, this is my anxiety. She's like, hey, Harley, this is my like feeling like you are not, supporting me right now. And so creating nomenclature for things really helps because it means that when you name something, you know how to address it. So I think the reason that's getting so much attention is that it's this great name for something that none of us really were able to articulate really well. And so that's cool. Frankly, it's not that it's not for me, at least for Shopify, it isn't this like huge epiphany. I mean, I think the advice that traditionally was given is that you do this. You hire really good people and you give them room to do their jobs. And I think that that has had some very disastrous results. And I think this has created things like when someone is in the details, you put this lens on them or this branding on them called you are micromanaging me, and that is a bad thing. And so now it's like, so what we've had was either in sort of the negative lens, either you're micromanaging me or you as the manager are not in the details. and they treat these sort of org charts like black boxes. I don't think that's the way to build a great company. I think that founder mode is founders have unique insights and understandings and a massive desire, a care about the business and the performance of the business that a lot of non-founders may not have. Look, I'm not, technically the founder of Shopify, but I've been around long enough, and I feel like Shopify is also my baby too, like it is to Toby. I care that much. That's why I do the things that I do on social, where I'm responding to 11 p.m. on a Saturday night. I'm responding to support stuff. That is founder mode, and I think that. I think it's really specifically at Shopify's, like in Shopify's DNA, we are founder led. We've always been in founder mode. We are always in the insight and the details. And I find the easiest way to check for that is when someone is pitching me on something in their area of expertise, which, that's all they focus on. And it's only one area that I focus on. I want to know that they know way more than I do. And if they do, then I'm happy to have this, as long as there's a high trust battery with that particular person, I'm happy to rely on them having gone deep. But more times than not, like if it's really important to me and really important to the company, I'm going to go deep. It's not me micromanaging. It's just that I believe we all need to be in the details. And I'll give you one more sort of point on this, which is, I think if you go back 100 years, 80 years, 50 years, 30 years ago, there was sort of this, like what they call the manager class, which were these people who went to business school. I went to business school too, so nothing against business school, but they went to business school and they came out and they looked for a job. And they looked for a big job at a big company. And some of them went into the tire business, and some of them went into the CPG business. And some of them stayed for a while, but a lot of them ended up moving around different companies. They were somewhat agnostic and somewhat neutral to the product. Now they're selling tires. Now they're selling ultimately they were just selling widgets. And so they didn't necessarily go deep in the history, the product, the engineering of what they were selling. It was just another job for them. That's not the case now. And founder mode is sort of the perfect articulation of that, which is like, I don't want to run a big company. I want to run Shopify. Shopify is the company that I like. The Venn diagram of my personal mission, which is entrepreneurship, and Shopify's mission, which is create more entrepreneurs, perfectly overlaps. This is the perfect company for me to spend 90 hours a week looking after. No one will care more about it than I do. That's not me micromanaging. That's not necessarily me being overly in the weeds because I don't trust other people. It's just that I care a lot. And I think that it is a very healthy evolution now. Obviously, it started with Brian Chesky talking about this at YC, and then Paul Graham obviously wrote this article about it. It is very healthy now that we've now given permission to founders and people and even non-founders. I mean, Fiji Sima, who's on our board, she's the CEO of Instacart. She wrote this great op-ed in Information, I think, the day after Founder Mode blog came out, even for non-founders. And she talked about that because Fiji used to run the Facebook app inside of Meta and worked very closely for Zuck. She saw Zuck in the weeds, in the details, and that gave her permission to go in the details. Now that she's running Instacart, she's also in the details. Instacart is a better company because of that. Meta is a better company because of that. And Shopify is a better company because of that. And I think that you can be a non-founder, but also be in founder mode. It is a level of care. It's a level of understanding that is very different than set it and forget it, or hire great people and let them do their thing. I think that we've played out that particular course, and the results generally were not very good.
All right. I love it. I think that's great. I think giving the names, giving the things a name is great. I don't know if you read the Walter Isaacson book on Elon Musk, but I thought of demon mode when you said that.
Yeah.
I was like, totally give it a name.
Yeah.
How do you
again, founder mode, like names matter, but also you have to have good names.
Definitely. How do you balance, like there's probably pros and cons of it. It resonated with me because again, I'm not founder, but it's family company. I'm, got the same, genetics as Bobby. So like we are all very much in the details and, not just overly delegating and letting things be. And arguably sometimes, too much. And Bobby and I will have arguments and I'm like, no, you don't have to approve every email or every social post that goes out, but like she just wants to. And I see both sides. Like there's definitely like a magic and a special touch that these founder led brands have. And when they sell, like things do get watered down. How do you still ensure that you're not micromanaging, that you're not having people lose their autonomy or they're not feeling, not empowered, whatever the opposite of that would be if you or Toby or whoever it is are getting involved in the details and making decisions?
It depends on on the trust battery level of that particular person. So if you sort of use the trust battery analogy, and everyone that starts your company starts at 50%, the goal is to get to 100% or 98% as fast as possible. How do you do that? Well, you get to 98% or 100% trust battery when you do what you say you're going to do, and you do that consistently over a long period of time. As you sort of move up the trust battery spectrum to a full battery, you're able to trust but verify a lot more than if someone's at a 30% trust battery. Now, like an old cell phone, at a certain point, the trust battery gets so low, it's never going to recharge again. That's probably not a place, like, that's probably a good time to say goodbye to that person, because there's no way you're ever going to trust them. And no matter what they do, it just won't recharge. There's been sufficient evidence that you just cannot do that. But where I find that I'm able to pull back a little bit is when this person's trust battery is really, really high. They've consistently done exactly what they said they would do. They're doing it better than I could do on my own. Then, one of the questions I get often on these podcasts or these interviews where I'm talking to people from the Shopify ecosystem is talk about apps versus core product. And I often talk about that, Shopify is going to build what most people need most of the time. And for everything that goes beyond that, we want to obviously work with, some things most of the time, or most things some of the time, we want to rely on third parties. It's a little bit like that as well, where I want someone, if you have a high trust battery and you've done things that you've worked on, that I've worked on with you, have been consistently impressive and way better than I could do it on my own. That's when I can sort of back off a little bit. But that doesn't mean that I'm not backing off because I don't care. I'm backing off because you got this. But I'm still gonna go in there because this is fun for me too. I enjoy this stuff. We're about to have our, I think, 38th or 39th earnings call. We've been public for almost 10 years, 4 earnings call per year. So we'll be at 40 earnings calls in early 2025. I still spent a lot of time writing my script for my earnings call. I still spent a lot of time memorizing all those metrics and talking to different product teams about how I can synthesize what they've done in the quarter so I can make it interesting and I can make it compelling to Wall Street or the public or the media so they have a good sense of these breadcrumbs that Shopify is leaving. We have an amazing team that can do that for me, but this really matters to me. I mean, it has to be me. I'm I can't read someone else's script. That will never work. So that is a really interesting, an area where I think I have to spend a lot of time in the weeds and details. And it's not because I don't trust them. It's because it's just I like it. It matters to me. And, I'm the chief storyteller around here. I need to be able to write my own script, my own story if I'm going to actually present it.
So do you just have to find where you go deep, because you can't do it everywhere. You don't have the time to do it everywhere. That's something I struggle with. And I'm much deeper on growth or ads, but then something else kind of takes a back seat. Do you oscillate back and forth? Hey, maybe this month or this period, I'm going to go deeper on this thing because I think I'm interested in it. And that's a big focus for us.
Yeah. I mean, Shopify Summit was in June, which was our first time that we brought the whole company together in 4 or 5 years. I mean, I spent a lot of time in April and May preparing for, what we were going to say, the messaging, all that stuff for Summit. That's over now. Black Friday is coming up now in November. Obviously, I'm now thinking a lot about the FCM and how that's going to play out. So it sort of goes in these waves here. So yeah, I mean, the important thing is making sure that the important thing stays the important thing, or, that whole expression. I think that really matters is you have to sort of recalibrate what is the most important way for me to spend my time right now. And then do that thing really, really well. And then reevaluate, okay, what's the most important thing now? I also think that it creates less stasis. It creates more movement and energy in your day-to-day life because no day is the same. That's a privilege.
For sure. I love that. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good one. Trying to keep the goal a goal.
I mean, I also, one thing, Cody, you and I talked about last time we spoke, I think it was over text message, just you mentioned this idea, it feels like Shopify still functions as a startup. I just want to spend a moment on that if I can, because I think it's really important. I think we are good at Shop. At Shop, we were really good at sort of keeping the most important thing. But there's this principle that Toby talks about that I think is super valuable for everybody listening, which is that it is really, really easy to add. It is extremely hard to subtract, whether it's projects or it's people or it's priorities. And so every time you add one new topic or one new project or one new goal, you are saying no to everything else. And when you think about it like that, where it's not just I just added one more thing, so you go from 14 projects to to 15 projects. No, it's actually that 15th project means all the other things that are kind of waiting in the sidelines. You have to say no to, and I think founders and people leading companies really should focus on where they can subtract and get really clear on what they were doing. There's a couple ways also that you can continuously do that from a hygiene perspective. So at the start of 2023, we looked at all meetings, all recurring meetings that had more than 3 people, and we canceled them. We just took them out. We called it a chaos monkey. We took them out of everyone's calendar. We canceled 12,000 calendar events. 12,000. That's unbelievable. Again, this is not just one person. This is like meetings of more than 3 people. And then the idea was after a cooling off period, you can add them back, but most of them didn't get added back. But it was really about like toil and time, and meetings are expensive. You all have to think about how you spend your time. And I think that this goes for direct to consumer, like DTC operators and founders also. But I think this idea of looking at the daily function, sort of what has become almost the cement of your daily operations, just because you've been doing it for a long time does not mean that it is actually important. And creating some sort of hygienic reset every year or two, even though it's going to cause a lot of disruption and people are going to get pissed off about it, is super healthy. And being able to get good at that over a long period of time means when people see those creeping back up, rather than me having to say anything, they are like, hey, this meeting, we've been having it for 6 months. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to cancel it. And that is where you create this organism that is so operationally efficient that it can kind of like, there's something called the law of ecology, which is for an organism to be successful or to survive, in any ecosystem, for a species to survive, that species needs to grow faster than the rate of change of the environment. Well, last quarter Shopify's revenue grew 25%, let's say. So let's just say Shopify is growing 25% year on year. That means that people at Shopify need to grow their capacity by more than 25% every year. Whew, I've been here for 15 years. It's like there's a compoundingness to it, right? Like that, like the law of large numbers is a real thing, and it becomes harder and harder. But when you begin to talk about it in that way and talk about the fact that Shopify is growing really fast, for all of us to requalify for our jobs means we have to grow faster than Shopify. I mean, challenge of a lifetime. That's life's work stuff.
Oh, I love that. I love how you put that. Yeah, that's been something that I don't want to say struggled with, but it's one of those growing pains of growth. As we're up 50% this year, last year was 70%. You hire somebody to be the lead of a email channel when you're a $20 million business. 2 years, you're much bigger. It's a completely different thing.
It's a different job.
Yeah, they've either got to grow or got a good boss.
Now, those people may get good at it. Now, this is back to your comment about founders. This is where founders are really great, because founders have, for the most part, or entrepreneurs, I should say, a better term for this, have this inherent desire for personal growth. They're ambitious, but they're not just ambitious about their business. The best entrepreneurs I know, and I consider you 3 as part of this group, they have an inherent desire themselves to get better. And when you combine getting better, like on a personal level, and also making your company better, you get these, I don't want to call them unicorns because it's a cheesy term, but you get these well above average returns.
Yeah, no, I feel that I'm worried about like not keeping up with the business, like myself, and not being able to lead it as we grow. Like every day, it's definitely like a worry and what drives me, because it is growing so fast and it's such a new frontier. Yeah. And one day, hopefully, it'll get to a size that is beyond me, and we'll need to bring in somebody with more experience. But for now, I'm like so determined to try to keep up and constantly chasing growth. Yeah, like you said, personally.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to look at it.
I want to tell you why Ridge moved our customer support to Richpanel. Some SaaS providers are jacking up prices for the same piece of software that's barely changed over the years. I think it was Jason Lemkin on a podcast recently said software has gone from being software as a service to software as a ripoff, and I don't think that's ever been more true. And I think Richpanel is a rare exception to that rule. So we took a demo with Richpanel, found out they were way ahead of the competition in terms of AI and self-service capabilities. Their support platform is exactly what we needed and what I felt would become more modern tooling for the type of experience we wanted to provide for our customers. So when we found out that they can easily migrate our data and get us up and running in 2 weeks, it was a no-brainer, which is why we migrated, and which is why brands like Thinx, Snow, Lashify, and 2,000 other brands have made the switch. If you are frustrated with random price hikes from your SaaS and want a trusted partner that can help you deliver awesome customer service, head to richpanel.com and book a demo today.
Could we dig into that real quick? So first off, I love Chaos Monkey. I see how you guys you label everything that's happening at your company, which I think is really interesting. And I love that one specifically. So with that 25% year-on-year growth example, what's the framework you use in Shopify then to make sure that the org is growing to support that growth? So is that purely people? Is there other ways that you look at growth within your org to support that growth? Or how do you kind of slice that up?
Yeah, people obviously plays probably the most outsized role there, but so does systems. Many years ago, when we were in one office, I don't know, handful of people, we were struggling. We would have lunch brought in, some sandwiches and stuff, and so after we'd have lunch, we'd say, hey, please throw out all your plates and stuff. And most people would do it. But every now and then you go into the lunchroom afterwards and you see plates everywhere. And it was just sort of this obvious thing. We're like, well, let's just put the garbage cans on the way out. Literally have it at the exit of the lunchroom. I mean, this is not anything anyone's going to take a note on in this podcast, but just put the garbage can, create the least amount of friction to do the right thing. You can sort of extrapolate that simple example around where to put the garbage cans as you're leaving the lunchroom, as opposed to put it in the beginning. So you have to go, back to the where you walk in, then you have to leave. Same thing with the best gym that people should go to is the gym that's on their way home. Why? Because you're literally passing it. So if you think about systems building from a company perspective, from the point of friction reduction, you begin to think about things like performance reviews. You begin to think about onboarding. You begin to think about hiring, or when you exit somebody. There are a bunch of things that all of us have in our companies that simply don't scale very well. And some of those things, when you put them on rails, people just do the thing you want them to do automatically. And so putting the garbage cans at the exit meant that there was no more plates there, because it was actually hard to leave without putting it was more difficult to leave your plate there because you're walking out past the garbage can than not. I think that's a really good way to think about it. And then the other way is, every couple of years we believe in this thing called tours of duty, which is a tour of duty is 3 years. And it gives us this great opportunity that every 3 years, so I'm on my 5th tour of duty now at 15 years. It gives us a great opportunity to have these conversations, say, hey, that tour we just did, that was really great. Are you up for this next tour? And the expectation of this next tour of duty is much bigger. And so you can decide that you don't want to go on this tour of duty. But by having these 3-year tours of duty, it forces a really great conversation, or a point in time, a milestone event where you can say, hey, let's chat about this next tour. Is it the same job you had the last tour? Is it a different one? You can also use that tour of duty concept for systems that you built initially. So, hey, the tour of duty of that, talent system is not working anymore. Let's actually create a new talent system for this next tour, because we're not, Shopify at some point was 14,000 people. We're now close to 8,000 people. The system we had to build for 14,000 people may not necessarily be the right one at 8,000 people. And we use sort of this 3-year block for tours of duty. You can use whatever cadence you want. Shopify is about a 20-year-old company. But that allows you to it's a forcing function to relook at, are all the things that we are using to operate this business, are they still as efficient and as elegant and as fun to use, and frankly, as productive as they were when they were introduced in the first place, both for people and for systems.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I see how frameworks are, the nomenclature and the frameworks, it just helps you build definition and hard contours around things that are happening at your company. That's really cool.
That's really where also I'm a lawyer by training. I did a joint law MBA. I didn't learn any of this in business school. you sort of learn this by doing. And so if you walk into these businesses and these companies with this, as Cody was saying, now he's the right guy to run Jones Road, but maybe in a few years he might not be. I'm suspicious that because I know him and I think has this incredible growth mindset. If you sort of go into these things with these incredible growth mindsets and you look at these things as like every challenge you has, we often say at Shopify that failure is the successful discovery of something that did not work. When you sort of use that lens, not just in business, but in your life, I'm a new dad or fairly new dad. I've Zoe is 5 and Bailey is 8. I have 2 daughters. I screw up a lot of stuff at home, both with my wife and also with my kids. And I'm okay with as long as I don't screw up the kids long-term and don't cause, massive long-term trauma for them. I'm okay with making some mistakes. I'm not okay with making those mistakes repeatedly. I don't think that's okay. I think my kids deserve more. My wife deserves more. Shopify deserves more. And so taking that approach of saying this is my learning experience. And the best part is I don't think you can get from a concentration of lesson perspective. I think you get the highest concentrations of lessons, like calorie rich lessons running a business. I don't think there's anything that can teach you to get that good that quickly at something.
Definitely if it's growing, at the rates that all these businesses are growing. I would say being a dad, probably number 2 though. Don't know where I've made more mistakes, being a dad or being a leader.
Because it's really hard. That whole parent thing is good, but it also, what it does do is it makes you really, really efficient around your time. I mean, I saw you watching, with your kids at your home, watching the interview with Bobby on, I think it was on Sunday.
Yeah.
You don't have time to waste.
Oh, and I had my computer open doing emails, checking ads probably. So,
it was amazing, right? Like you just don't have, so you try to manage that and you try to be as efficient as possible because you can't fill up your plate with too many things. There's only your plate's only this big. And so you have to get rid of things. Back to the subtraction. You have to subtract stuff that is just not giving you, joy or helping you grow your business or making your life better.
Were there things that slipped through the cracks when you guys cut those meetings and it was like, oh, this information is no longer getting to people? Because selfishly, I hate meetings. I'm in way more meetings than I want to be. And I just am having trouble cutting them. But also, curious if you things were not getting communicated that you needed to. What were the consequences that you found?
A bunch of things that I thought I needed to know, I actually didn't need to know. I mean, and meaning it just wasn't that valuable information. It was a nice to have.
Okay.
And the meetings that were very critical, where the information that was being disseminated in that meeting was critical for decision making, they were put back in the calendar very quickly. So that's the reason why, I think if anyone's going to use this sort of chaos monkey experiment in their own businesses, I would suggest that you have a cooling off period where you cannot add them back for 2 weeks, 4 weeks. You pick the right cadence for you, and then you add back only ones you have to. And if you do this over a couple years in a row, time and time again, you really do begin to get good at this change, and you begin to have people in the meetings that sort of that sort of put up their hand and say, this doesn't feel like a productive thing. But you kind of have to teach that behavior because organically and I think naturally human beings, when they're in a meeting, they want to be part of that meeting. They want to contribute to that meeting. There's a concept called Chesterton's fence. Do you guys know that concept? No. It's fascinating. I just learned about it a couple of years ago, but Chesterton's fence is this idea that you move into, so the metaphor is you move into a house, for example, it's an old house, beautiful house, and you move in there, and there's this fence there. You don't know why the fence is there, but you don't take it down. That is human nature. It's just, there's a fence there. You have no idea why. It doesn't feel like it's serving any purpose, but most people don't take it down. And it's because there is this inherent desire for status quo. There's a fear of anything that is changing status quo. But some people, I don't know, going back to Musk, as you mentioned earlier, he probably just go and be like, this is not an efficient or a valuable fence. I'm going to take it down. That's not what most people do.
Yeah, and a lot of founders do that, but I feel like with you guys hiring a lot of founders, is that something most companies, it's just the founder who's saying that, adding the chaos. Is that something that you guys encourage anyone on your team to speak up and be like, hey, this doesn't need to be here?
Oh, hell yeah. 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 So here, this is actually the exact definition of Chesterton's fence. So Chesterton's fence is the principle that reforms should not be made until the reasoning behind the existing state of affairs is known. it's so silly, right? Like there's that the fence doesn't belong there. But yeah, having more founders in your company, having more entrepreneurs in your company helps with that, because they themselves they just operate in that way. Like I like this idea of creating a founder's paradise at Shopify, the place that founders can go to do their life's work. And that is not a 1 + 1 = 3 type of equation. That's like a 1 + 1 = 10 equation, where you get 5 founders in a room. You don't get, the summation is not 5, it's 50.
Okay, so I've got a question. I know I want to be conscious of time. We've got a couple minutes left, but you talk about Shopify being a place where founders can come to do their life's work. I'm thinking like a really broad product question, but when we think about Shopify 10 years from now, do you think we'll know it for something different than what we do today? Or is there any singular thing that you're particularly excited about the growth of?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. Let's look at the history. So I think initially like e-commerce for SMBs. And then it was like e-commerce and point of sale for SMBs. And then it was e-commerce and point of sale for like SMBs, but also really big brands too. Mattel, Staples, Procter & Gamble, I don't know, Supreme. I don't know, I'm looking back behind me right now. Kith is right there. So companies like that. More and more, I think the relationship that we have in the lives of the millions of people that use us is changing from a channel-specific tool to this idea of being a retail operating system. That's not the case across the board, but this idea of like a retail operating system, I really love, because it suggests this idea of being channel agnostic. Right now in the US, e-commerce as a percentage of total sales is about 16 or 18%. It's like 15% in Canada. Shockingly, it's like 25% in the UK. UK is killing it in e-commerce. It's Western Europe and France and Italy, it's much lower. China, apparently it's 50-50, but I've never been able to substantiate that. I think the future of retail and the future of commerce is going to be not online or offline. It's going to be every single surface area where consumers spend time. And not every one of those channels is going to be valuable to any of the merchants, to Jones Road. But like we announced on Friday, we announced integration with Roblox. Shopify is going to be the commerce partner for Roblox. Really, really cool. And that was a really fun thing. It all happened in a matter of weeks. We got it done. And again, back to the concept of like doing things differently rather than going media tour. I literally filmed something from inside of Roblox's like cartoon Roblox Harley. I don't think maybe Jones Road should consider trying Roblox. It may not work. But a week earlier, we announced more stuff we're doing with YouTube shopping, particularly in the affiliate program the affiliate program for YouTube, where now if you have 15,000 or 30,000 makeup tutorial creators on YouTube, Jones Road can go to them and say, we're going to work with you. We're going to embed commerce in your videos. And while you're putting on the Miracle Bomb, you can actually buy the Miracle Bomb in real time while the video is concurrently playing. That I think is where ultimately we're going to go, where we are not going to be e-commerce for this or point of sale for this other company. It's going to be wherever you want to sell, however you want to sell, you should use Shopify for that. And the responsibility we have to qualify to be your retail operating system, because that is not a right, that is a privilege that we have to earn, and then we have to keep re-earning, we have to re-qualify for that job, is that wherever you potentially have a potential consumer spending time, we have to make it really easy to sell on that. And if you are Fenty Beauty and you're Rihanna, or I just read an article, Selena Gomez is now a billionaire with her brand, which is on Shopify too. They probably should sell their products on the Spotify channel. Right? We have a Shopify channel for Spotify. They should use that. And for Roblox, if you're Mattel, you probably should be using the Roblox channel. But I think ultimately where I'd like to end up is being the world's first retail operating system, where you just tell us where you want to sell and we make that really easy. And maybe, with some really cool things we're doing with AI and Shopify Magic right now, we actually tell you, hey, you should be selling on this channel based on all the data we have across, we just crossed $1 trillion of GMV cumulative, across $1 trillion of GMV. We believe that these 3 channels will be your core channels. I think that would work really well, and I think you're already seeing it now. Do you guys remember when the Kith app came out and everyone was like freaking out because it was so cool, had like these membership tiers? Well, a bunch of other companies then saw that it went out and emulated this Kith app for their own businesses. In some cases, it worked well. In some other cases, it did not work. Why? Because they weren't necessarily they were copying someone else's version of their modern commerce, and rather than sort of think about what their version of the Kith app is, which may have nothing to do with an app. It actually may be an in-store experience a la Glossier, which is just fantastic.
Awesome answer. I appreciate it. Putting miracle bombs beneath the YouTube videos, not all that different than putting the trash cans near the exit of the lunchroom,
or a cooking show that where like they're using random pots and pans, but actually HexClad or our place sends them a bunch of great pots and pans, and now you're like, that pot or that pan, that looks awesome, I want to buy it, but I don't want to stop the YouTube video, open another browser tab and buy it. You should buy it right there. There's still way too much friction around. I announced on the last earnings call that we're working a lot with QVC, and so I'm getting a chance to spend some time with DR, who's the CEO of QVC. QVC in many ways was the original direct-to-consumer model, which is like they bought TV spots, they bought a channel, they bought bandwidth. John Malone from Liberty actually owns QVC today, sort of the original cable cowboy. But they bought this thing because they're like, we're going to buy an audience and we're going to send great products with great storytelling in front of that audience. It worked amazingly well. It still works so well, decades later. The reason it works well is because they have a deep understanding of who is going to buy those products and how to sell it to them. And they're the original direct-to-consumer guys.
100%.
That was a great question and an even better answer. All right,
thanks.
I got one more question because we are out of time. Last year, Black Friday, you shouted out Jones Road for being top selling product. Question for you: when you say that, is that only on the day of Black Friday, or is that over like the Black Friday period? Because for this year, I think we're planning on moving it up, so I don't know if we'll qualify. If it has to be the day.
So to be clear, I think it was the Miracle Mini Balm.
Yeah, and
it was the best. This is my memory is that's like a year ago, but I think it was the best selling product on Cyber Monday 2023. And what was neat about that was I was doing a media tour and I was like on live broadcast and I was getting updates from my team in real time. And in the morning, and then I think in the afternoon as well, your Miracle Mini Balm was like the best selling product from a trajectory, like a sales per minute perspective at that time. So it was Cyber Monday, I believe, and I would love to text you and say you guys did it again.
Trying. It is our goal. I can tell you. I wanted to know the criteria because it's our goal. Since we did it, actually a year before that, you shouted out a competitor of ours and just like friendly competition. I was like, damn, that's going to be us next year. So it was a super cool moment. Wow. We did it, but now it's our goal again to do it again. So we're going to do our best. Have your alerts ready from your team.
I will get that. I also want to say this. I know you guys, the listeners here, and you three more than anyone, you guys understand Shopify at a much more sophisticated technical level. And I just want to say a couple things because whether it's like checkout extensions or one-page checkout or things like Shopify Markets or I think Cody and I talked a little bit about A/B testing checkout, for example. I want you all to know this. Like, we will never claim that Shopify is perfect. We will never claim that everything works exactly as it should. The one thing that is really important, if you're working in the Shopify ecosystem as a merchant, as a partner, as a affiliate, as an anything, as just a consumer that really studies the company, the one thing that is really important for me to leave you with is that there is no company on the fucking planet that will work as hard as we do to keep improving. Now, I know, I mentioned these topics because these are some of the topics that the three of you have messaged to me over the years. Your dismay with this particular thing, or hey, one page versus everything we are doing is in the interest of. I want to say the thing, right? Let's not like beat around the bush. Everything that we are doing is 100% in the interest of how to make you more successful, how to make you more money, how to make your brands grow bigger and your businesses grow more profitably. Do we always get it right? No. I recognize that. We all recognize that. But I'm going to say this on behalf of 9,000 people that work at Shopify. There is no group, there's no collective of people on the planet that gives a shit more than we do. This is our life's work. And keep sending us feedback. Keep beating me up about, when when there's an issue and you send me a message or a DM or something on X, otherwise you do it publicly. So you got my attention very quickly. But I don't claim that everything is perfect. What I do claim and what I do promise is that we will work harder than anyone else you will ever work with in any capacity from a business perspective to make sure that it gets fixed. And the product just gets better and better and more fun to use and more and helps you be more successful. The entire business model of Shopify is predicated on you doing well. If you don't sell a lot on Cyber Monday for Jones Road, Shopify also doesn't make that money. So the fact that we are literally on the same side of the table from an economic perspective changes the relationship between us and I think most other software vendors, if you want to use that term, that you may operate with. So I'm proud of that. I got your fucking backs. We got your backs. And we're on the precipice now, I think, of the next 2 months are going to be hopefully some of the best, BFCM lead up months in retail history, which goes back 1,000 years.
Well, I hope you're right. This was awesome. I enjoyed this. I think I can speak for everyone listening. It's going to be an incredible episode. So many takeaways. I'm fired up to build. Can't wait to get off here and go build and grow a little bit. But thank you so much for being here, Harley. Really appreciate it. This was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you to three of you for inviting me on, and thank you for your contributions, not just to your own businesses, but also to this ecosystem. It's we've never met in person, but it sort of feels like somehow we know each other really well. It's this weird relationship we have in the Shopify community. I often say it's community over everything, but this is a very special part of our work lives that we have people that feel more like friends than they do like customers, which it sounds cheesy, but it's legit.
Totally agree.
Feel the same.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Harley.
Thank you, Harley.
Oh man, that was a good one. That was probably one of my favorite episodes yet. Harley is amazing. I think everybody's going to love this episode. If you've made it this far, please shout us out, tag us on Twitter, tag us on X, let us know what you think. Subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, subscribe on YouTube, give us some comments. We'd love to engage, hear what you think about this episode. That's episode 26 with Harley, president of Shopify. As always, thanks so much to our sponsors, Motion, Richpanel, and Prescient AI.